He was faithful, honest, and loved by a king, but hated by men who wanted him destroyed. In a world where jealousy burned and laws were twisted, one man chose to stand for God, even when it meant facing death. Thrown into a pit of roaring lions, with no one to help him and no way out, could this truly be the end? But what if I told you, the real roar in this story didn't come from the lions? Stay with me, because what happens next will stir your heart and shake your soul. If you love stories of faith, courage, and God's unstoppable power, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single one. And please, share this video with someone you care about so they too can witness the miracle of Daniel, and the God who still saves today. Long, long ago, in a land far away, there lived a man named Daniel. He wasn't a warrior with a sword. He didn't have armies. He didn't wear a crown. But Daniel had something even stronger. He prayed. Every single day, without skipping, not once, Daniel knelt down, opened his heart, and talked to God. He prayed when he was happy. He prayed when he was scared. He prayed when things were good, and when things were hard. Daniel was different. Not because of how he looked or how he dressed, but because of what lived inside him. A love for God that burned like fire. He lived in a big kingdom, ruled by King Darius. Now, King Darius was not a bad man. In fact, he was quite wise. And he saw something very special in Daniel. Daniel didn't steal. He didn't lie. He didn't cheat. Every job the king gave him, Daniel did it with all his heart. And he did it right. So King Darius thought, this Daniel is better than all my other officials. I will put him in charge of the whole kingdom. It was a big, big promotion. But it came with big, big problems. Because not everyone liked Daniel. The other leaders, the princes, the rulers, the governors, they were jealous. Deep in their hearts, something ugly was growing. They didn't like how the king trusted Daniel more than them. They didn't like that Daniel, a man who wasn't one of their people, was getting all the honor. So they met together in secret. One man said, "We have to stop Daniel before he becomes greater than us all." Another whispered, "Yes. But how? We've watched him. He doesn't mess up. He doesn't break rules." They all frowned. They had spied on him for days. But Daniel was too clean, too honest, too faithful. Then one of the men leaned in with a cruel grin. "Wait," he said, "there is one thing Daniel never stops doing, even when no one's watching." The room went quiet. He prays. Every day. Like clockwork. The men looked at each other. "If we can't catch him doing something wrong," the man said slowly, "then let's make praying the crime." There was a dark idea, like a shadow crawling over the ground. They weren't interested in truth. They didn't care about God. They only wanted to trap Daniel, and now they had found a way. The next morning, they hurried to the king with fake smiles and flattering words. "O mighty King Darius," they said, bowing low, "you are the greatest king in all the world. So wise, so strong, so powerful." The king lifted his head. He liked the sound of that. "We've all agreed," they continued, "that you should make a new law. A special law. One that says for 30 days, no one is allowed to pray to any god or man, except you, O king." King Darius raised an eyebrow. "Only me?" "Yes, only you. Anyone who breaks the law," they said with pretend sadness, "must be thrown into the den of lions." Lions. Big ones. With sharp teeth and golden eyes that shine in the dark. King Darius looked around. All his officials were nodding. It seemed like everyone agreed. And he thought, maybe this law isn't so bad. Just 30 days. And besides, no one would dare break it. So without thinking more, the king signed the law. The seal of his ring pressed down into the wax. And with that, it became unchangeable. Not even the king himself could undo it. The wicked men bowed again, hiding their smirks. The trap was ready. Far away, Daniel heard the news. A law had been made. No praying allowed. Not to anyone but the king. The people whispered. Some cried. Some grew afraid. But not Daniel. He didn't panic. He didn't run. He didn't try to hide. Daniel walked to his house. He climbed the stairs. He opened his window, just like always. And then he knelt down. He folded his hands. He closed his eyes. And he began to talk to the only one who had never failed him. God of heaven, he whispered, I thank you for another day. Outside, behind the walls, the wicked men were watching. They had followed Daniel. Their eyes were wide. Their hearts were cold. And when they saw him kneeling, they grinned. We got him, one of them hissed. They didn't wait. They ran straight to the king. The throne room of King Darius was bright with lamps and filled with the scent of burning oils. But the mood inside was suddenly heavy. The palace doors creaked open. The officials stepped in, their faces serious. But behind their straight expressions, their hearts danced with pride. Their trap had worked. They stood tall before the king and bowed deeply. "O King Darius," one of them said smoothly, "do you remember the law you signed? The one that says no man can pray to any god or human but you, for 30 days. The king nodded without thinking. "Yes. The law of the Medes and Persians. It cannot be changed." "Yes," said the king, sitting tall. "Well, there is one man who has broken it. A man who thinks he is above your law. A man who prays 3 times a day to his God. His name is Daniel, one of the captives from Judah." The king froze. "Daniel?" he said quietly. "My Daniel?" The men nodded. The king's eyes snapped up. "What did you say?" "He still prays," the man continued, 3 times a day. To his God. Just as he always has. The words hit him like a knife in the chest. Daniel? The man he trusted more than anyone. The one he was about to promote over the whole kingdom. The man who had never lied, never cheated, never stolen. Daniel had broken the law? No, Daniel had stayed loyal to his God. And the king suddenly realized what this was. And in that moment, the king realized what had happened. It was a trap. The law wasn't made to honor him. It was made to destroy Daniel. King Darius stood up fast. His heart was racing. His hands trembled. A trap set by these very men, and he had fallen into it. His hands clenched. His heart pounded. The officials waited, watching him closely. Waiting to see what he would do. But King Darius said nothing. He stood and turned away. All day long, the king walked back and forth in his palace. He called his scribes. He searched the books of law. He questioned his most trusted advisors. "There must be a way," he whispered. "There must be a way to save him." But no one had an answer. The law had been sealed with the royal ring. It could not be undone. Not even by the king himself. And the sun was sinking lower and lower. The time was running out. The officials returned as the sky turned orange. "O king," they said, "you know the law. It must be carried out before nightfall." The king turned toward them slowly. His face was pale. His lips were tight. He had no more words to give. He had lost. Daniel would be taken. The royal guards were called. A quiet crowd gathered outside the palace gates, their faces filled with fear and confusion. Daniel was beloved by many. He had helped the people. He had guided the king. And now, he was being sent to the lions. But even as the guards prepared, the king came close to Daniel and looked into his eyes. He didn't see fear. He saw peace. And that made the king's heart ache even more. With a trembling voice, he spoke. "Daniel, your God, whom you serve so faithfully, may he rescue you." And with that, the order was given. The lion's den waited in silence. The sun had disappeared. The stars began to sparkle in the sky, but no one was smiling. Not the guards. Not the people. And definitely not the king. The air felt cold, even though it was a warm night. A strange silence fell over the city as the royal guards led Daniel through the narrow streets toward a place no one ever wanted to go. The lion's den. Stone walls surrounded it like a prison. At the top, a giant round stone was waiting, ready to seal the opening like a lid. Inside the den, the lions paced back and forth, their sharp claws clicking on the floor, their low growls echoing into the night. They were hungry. They hadn't been fed. And now, they were waiting. Daniel walked with steady steps. His hands were tied. His robes swayed softly with the wind. But his heart? His heart was not afraid. Because Daniel knew something the king didn't yet understand. No matter how deep the pit, God is deeper still. Behind him, King Darius followed, his face heavy with grief. His crown sat crooked on his head. His eyes were red from holding back tears. He still couldn't believe what was happening. "Daniel," he whispered, barely loud enough to be heard. "You've always been faithful. You've done no wrong. You never betrayed me. And now I've betrayed you." Daniel turned slightly, and for a moment, their eyes met. No anger. No blame. Just peace. And somehow, that made the king's heart hurt even more. They reached the edge of the den. The wind howled softly. A lion roared from below. The guards tied a rope around Daniel's waist and arms. They lowered him down slowly, inch by inch, into the darkness. The growls grew louder. The shadows deeper. Soon, Daniel's feet touched the stone floor. The lions circled, their golden eyes glinting in the torchlight from above. And then came the sound that broke the king's heart. The huge stone rolled over the top of the den. With a deep, hollow thud, it dropped into place, locking Daniel inside. The silence afterward was worse than the growls. The king stood still. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Then slowly he stepped forward. He reached into his robe, pulled out his royal seal, and pressed it into the soft wax that had been poured around the edge of the stone. The guards did the same, adding their own seals. No one would be able to open it unless every seal was broken. It was finished. Daniel was alone. The walk back to the palace felt like walking through fog. Darius said nothing. The servants offered food, he refused. The musicians were ready to play, he waved them away. No warm bath. No soft music. No sweet songs could help him now. The golden bedchamber of the king felt like a prison of its own. He tossed off his crown and paced the floor like a man lost in the desert. He tried to lie down. He couldn't rest. He tried to sit. He couldn't be still. He covered his ears, but he could still hear the growls in his mind. What if the lions had already attacked? What if Daniel had cried out for help in the dark? What if God didn't answer? But then, a thought broke through. A memory. Daniel, standing tall and calm during storms, wars, and danger. Daniel, praying when everyone else was afraid. Daniel, speaking of his God with a peace the king had never seen before. "The God whom you serve continually," Darius whispered to himself, repeating the words he had spoken earlier. "May he rescue you." And for the first time in his life, the great king of Persia did something he had never done before. He prayed. No fancy words. No royal speech. Just a broken heart whispering into the night. "Please, God of Daniel, if you are real, save him." The palace clock chimed once. Then twice. Then again. The hours dragged by like years. The sky outside began to fade from black to gray. The king sat by the window, waiting, praying, hoping. As soon as the first bird began to sing, King Darius stood. He didn't wait for his servants. He didn't wait for his horses. He ran. The sky was still pale, painted with soft blues and whispers of gold. Most of the city was still asleep. But King Darius? He had been awake all night. No music. No food. No rest. His heart had been locked in a den even darker than Daniel's. But now, as the sun began to rise, the king could wait no longer. He threw on his royal robe, left his crown behind, and rushed out of the palace, running through the quiet streets. His sandals slapped against the stone path as he panted, robes fluttering behind him like wings. Guards tried to follow but couldn't keep up. He had one thought, one hope, one desperate cry burning inside him. Please, God of Daniel, let him be alive. The lion's den came into view. Cold, silent, still. The stone was still sealed. The wax around its edge still bore the marks of his ring. But what was inside? Had the lions attacked? Had Daniel survived the night? The king's hands shook. He stepped forward slowly and signaled for the stone to be moved. With a loud grinding sound, the heavy rock was rolled away, revealing the deep, dark hole below. A rush of damp air rose from the pit. The king leaned over the edge. And then, with a trembling voice, he called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve so faithfully, been able to rescue you from the lions?" For a heartbeat, nothing. Silence. Then another. The king's eyes began to sting. He swallowed hard. But suddenly, a voice echoed from the darkness. "Come, steady, alive. O king, live forever." The king gasped. He fell to his knees. Daniel's voice continued, floating up from the pit like sunlight through clouds. "My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. And, O king, I have done no wrong before you either." Tears burst from the king's eyes. Joy and wonder flooded his heart like a river breaking through a dam. "Quick!" he shouted to the guards. "Lift him up. Get him out, now." Ropes were lowered. Hands reached down. And slowly, carefully, Daniel was lifted up from the lion's den. As he rose into the light, the crowd around the den gasped. There wasn't a scratch on him. Not a tear in his robe. Not a bruise on his skin. Not even one lion hair on his clothes. The great lions sat quietly in the background, like sleepy cats curled up in the sun. Daniel stepped onto the ground, standing tall, his face calm, his eyes clear. And for the first time in hours, King Darius could breathe. He ran forward and wrapped his arms around Daniel. He didn't care about being king. He didn't care about being seen. He just cared that Daniel, his trusted friend, was alive. "Your God," the king whispered through tears, "he is real." But the story wasn't over. The wicked men who had tricked the king stood in the shadows, watching everything. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't planned for a miracle. But the king had seen enough. He turned to them, eyes full of fire. "You used my law to lie. You used your power to hurt an innocent man. And now you will face justice." And just like that, the trap they had set for Daniel became their own. Judgment came swiftly. And the lions that had been silent all night suddenly roared with fury. Later that day, the king gathered all his messengers, all his writers, all his scribes. He took out a fresh scroll. He dipped his royal ring in ink. And he began to write a new law. This one was not a trap. It was not a test. It was a declaration of truth. He sent it to every nation, tribe, and people under his rule, to the ends of the earth. This is what the law said. "Peace and greetings to all people in every land. I, King Darius, give this command. Let everyone everywhere fear and worship the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. And from that day on, Daniel continued to serve in the palace. He walked through the courts with quiet strength. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he always had. And the people around him no longer laughed or whispered. They listened. They respected him. And many began to believe in the God who had saved him. Daniel never bragged. He didn't need to. Because the real hero of the story was the one who had walked into the lion's den with him. The living God. The God who saves. What a powerful reminder that no pit is too deep, no lion too fierce, and no night too dark for the God who saves. If this story moved your heart, imagine how many others need to hear it too. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story that builds your faith. And please, share this with friends, family, or anyone who needs to be reminded that God is still with us, even in the lion's den. Until next time, stay strong, stay faithful, and keep trusting the God who never fails.